September last year, the Home Office moved hundreds of asylum seekers into 2 army barracks, Napier and Penally in South Wales, which the Home Secretary deemed was suitable for them because, she said, it had been suitable for the military.
I came to the UK to study. I came here with a student visa and studied in one of the best universities in the United Kingdom. Then something happened to me back then in my home country, which made me unable to go back home. So I claimed asylum and I found myself in Napier Barracks.
The Home Office has been keeping suicides in immigration removal centres a state secret.
Well, I think it's just shocking that the Home Office ever thought that putting so many people in a dormitory in the middle of a pandemic was a good idea.
Well, we did ask the Home Office for an interview, but nobody was available.
The High Court will decipher whether or not the Home Office acted illegally when placing asylum seekers in now notorious Napier Barracks.
I think that only if you die, you can go out.
Hello, Adrian. Oh, yeah, how are you?
I'm okay, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I was waiting for your call. One of the things that we didn't have in our own country was decency and dignity. Like, human life has no price in our own country, and you have no dignity and respect. And this is the same thing, actually, that we experience in Napier Barracks. We received that kind of attitude again, although we left that environment and came to a safe democratic country, but we were still suffering from those things.
How many of you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5...
13 people.
12.
13 people.
13 of you. Are you okay? You don't have life jackets?
You don't have a jacket. You don't have a jacket.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic, there was already a lack of asylum support accommodation. The Home Office has said that as of March 2020, there was an increase in people in the asylum support system.
What we have to bear in mind is where we're going to the lowest cost housing. Very often these are deprived communities with their own social and economic challenges to begin with. So we're not necessarily placing people into the best conditions.
And then obviously because of the COVID social distancing measures that needed to be put in place, a lot of people were having to be, separated out and put in hotel accommodation and that kind of thing, because usually asylum seekers would be housed in shared accommodation. And so I think the Home Office has just tried to use the barracks as an alternative source of accommodation to house these destitute asylum seekers who they had a duty to provide adequate accommodation to.
I mean, the evidence we've seen is horrific. I can't believe that this is not part of the plan is to close military barracks accommodation.
Well, the accommodation, as the Permanent Secretary has said already this morning, this is military accommodation that has housed our servicemen and women, and it's housed servicemen and women recently. If you
would put the military personnel there now, then it's you that's insulting our servicemen, not folks who criticise it.
Firstly, it's completely overcrowded. Most people are staying in 14-bed dorms. So that's 7 beds on one side, 7 beds on the other. The 7 beds are facing each other. There's small little partitions in between each bed. There's no social distancing measures in place at all. We understand that most dorms, there'll be 2 dorms of 14 men each, sharing 1 bathroom space. So that's 2 toilets and 4 shower heads. Up until quite recently, there was a shared cafeteria space. There weren't staggered meal times or anything like that. So there was about 400 people sharing 1 communal cafeteria space, which is quite shocking considering everything that's been going on over the last year.
So in total, in January, there were 178 positive tests and 19 in February, leading to a total of 197 between the start of January and now.
Oh my God, you had 178 cases at a centre which had dormitory accommodation of over 20 people in those dormitories. Well, that looked pretty clear evidence to me that those dormitories were not COVID safe if you managed to generate within them 178 COVID positive cases.
We tried to do something. We tried to do peaceful protest.
Guys, if you break the gate, there's no freedom, so you will be arrested for criminal damage. So don't do that. Okay? Don't do that.
We went through hunger strike, and a few people committed suicide. I mean, when a person decides to take their own life, it means that they are desperate and they have no hope. So why you are putting those kind of people in a place that worsen their situation and their mental health?
There's a complete lack of mental health support. There was one nurse between approximately 400 people in the barracks with, from what we understand, very little mental health specialism. And it was just, really not good at all.
No sooner had the repurposed barracks opened than things started to go pear-shaped.
In the first days that the process used to happen, all they could do was threatening us that if you, for example, going out and protesting outside of the camp, you're going to be arrested, and if you are arrested, so your application process will be paused and maybe it will be withdrawn.
And they are here, coming here today. They're not going to come here if you stay here. If you stay here, they're going to go, we're not interested. If you're inside, you can speak to them. All the time you lot are here, you're not winning, you're making yourself, you could get arrested. If you get arrested, then you might have your asylum taken away. So you're losing your own chances. But go inside and you won't do.
So they were all threatening us that you should not talk to journalists, you shouldn't protest. All we could do was they advised us to protest peacefully inside of the camp, which had no impact at all. I mean, no one could see us, no one could hear us. There was the feeling that their complaints are falling on deaf ears. No one cares about them. And the Home Office and the private firms who were in charge of camp didn't care at all about what's happening there and about the life conditions that we were dealing with.
So the barracks is currently run by a company called Clear Springs Ready Home, and they're an accommodation provider who are contracted by the Home Office. Under the Section 95 of the Immigration and Asylum Act, where an asylum seeker is destitute, the Secretary of State has a duty to provide adequate accommodation and financial support to avoid a breach of their human rights.
I mean, the United Kingdom is one of the richest and greatest developed country in the world. So I don't think that putting 600 vulnerable asylum seekers in a unsuitable and unsafe conditions like Napier Barracks or Penally camp is just about the mismanagement. It definitely has a political purpose. It actually ruined the reputation of the United Kingdom of protecting the people who are vulnerable. I mean, you can hear from the politicians repeatedly saying that this country has a proud history of protecting those who are vulnerable.
And it is absolutely right that Britain should fulfil its moral responsibility to help those refugees, just as we've done so proudly throughout our history.
The UK has a proud history of welcoming people who are fleeing persecution to our country.
So do not let them peddle a false narrative that Conservatives do not have a proud history of providing a safe haven to the most in need.
But the question is, if this country is going to have a proud future protecting who really need help and support.
In the last 20 years, we've seen these hostile environment policies being brought into force, which curtailed the asylum seekers' rights in the UK. So they can't claim benefits, they can't rent any property, they can't work.
We will make more immediate returns of those who come here illegally and break our rules every single week. And we will continue to examine all practical measures to effectively deter illegal migration.
They criminalize asylum seekers by calling them illegal immigrants, although there is no such a thing as illegal immigrants. I mean, even UN state that no human is illegal. When you are fleeing war or persecution, when your city is under bombing, you cannot just sit behind a laptop and apply for a visa and book a flight ticket and come to the United Kingdom.
The UK should not be regarded as a place where you can automatically come and break the law by seeking to arrive illegally. If you come illegally, you are an illegal migrant, and I'm afraid the law will treat you as such.
The Financial Times reported that the government discussed sending asylum seekers to offshore immigration centers in Ascension Island or St. Helena in the South Atlantic. But these leaks also revealed more concerning plans for those trying to cross the channel illegally. They had the idea of installing boats with pump-generating waves that would force migrants to return to French waters. This idea was dismissed clearly, though, due to the risk that the migrants' boat might capsize.
It might kill people, basically.
So at least it
unbelievable,
was...
isn't it?
They criminalize people, the asylum seekers, by calling them illegal immigrants. So you can see that what are going to be the next consequences of calling some people illegal. They are criminalizing them and they are putting them in detention centers, they are putting them in army barracks which are not suitable and decent for them. The next steps are going to be even worse.
In terms of policy changes, I think asylum seekers need to be given proper advice about legal aid for immigration. They need to be given advice about mental health support as soon as they get here. And there needs to be more asylum support accommodation, because there's been a lack of asylum support accommodation for a long time. And I think the quality of the accommodation and the availability of it needs to be, there needs to be more housing stock, I think.
Asylum seekers eventually will become a member of this community, and like all the members of the community, they will contribute to the society, which gave them safety, freedom, and refuge. Some of them choose to study and choose to have a professional career or contributing to the economy of the country. And some of them actually decide to raise a child, and their child will become the home secretary of the country.
Thank you.
Asylum seekers are not invaders, criminals, savages, illegal, or so. They are human, like you or like anyone else, with different backgrounds. They did not have the privilege to be born in a free and modern and democratic country.